Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be talking about the Rural Northern Immigration Pilot Program, or the RNPP. Before we start talking about how to apply and what the requirements are, let's first get something straight. This program was designed to bring economic development to rural and northern areas of Canada. Various communities have been selected to participate, and some might be added much later. But for now, some communities that have been added to participate in this program include Thunder Bay in Ontario, Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, Timmins, North Bay, Brandon in Manitoba, Gretna in Manitoba, Moose Jaw in Saskatchewan, Clersham in Alberta, Vernon and West Kootenay in British Columbia. Now, these are some of the communities that have been added to participate in this particular program. These communities are to recommend applicants to the federal body based on economic needs that such applicants fulfills in that community. So if you intend to apply through these programs, you have to make sure it meets the criteria of the particular community you want to apply to, and the community would in turn recommend you to the federal body. So when you apply to the federal body, your application becomes smooth and easy. It becomes easier for you to obtain your PR. But just like the PNP, you will be mandated to stay, live and work in that particular community for a number of years. Let's see what this particular immigration program entails. Now, this program is a little similar to the AIPP, that's the Atlantic Immigration Program, in the sense that its requirements are a little relaxed compared to the federal skilled worker. Here, CL4 might be enough for you. You don't need the $12,000 plus required for settlement funds. Here, you need just 8,000 Canadian dollars. In this immigration program, it's also not compulsory that you graduate from a university or polytechnic. A secondary school results might just be enough. Now, some of these cities have already started their immigration program since the 1st of December 2019, and some haven't started. For the sake of this program, let's look at what you need to apply generally across all the communities. First, you need your ECA. A secondary school SSC result might just be enough, but if you have more than that, it's an added advantage. After that, the IELTS CLB4 might just be enough, but if you score higher than that in your IELTS, it's an added advantage. Now, you need a reference letter from your current employer. Yes, your job in Nigeria there. You need a letter from your current employer. Then you need to update your CV in the Canadian format. You can Google what the Canadian format looks like, or you can pay people to do it for you. You can go on Fiverr. I think yes, you can go on Fiverr and meet those resume guys, and they would tell them you want your CV updated in the Canadian format, and they will charge you some amount of money to get it done for you. Then you have to prepare your proof of funds, that's the settlement funds. In this particular program, for an individual, you need just 8,000 Canadian dollars against the 12,000 plus that was needed in the express entry program. Then you need to choose your community, make research on that particular community, apply to an employer in that particular community, bag a job, and use your employment letter or your employment offer to secure nomination or recommendation from the community. It's that simple. Now, what you need to know about the process. First, you have to be sure you meet the IRCC eligibility requirements, which is pretty much the same requirements as the FSW, as the PNP. And to know more about these requirements, you can click here. Then secondly, you need to meet the community specific requirements. Now, Thunder Bay might have different requirements than Sault Ste. Marie, and they too might have different requirements from Brandon. You just have to read up on that particular community you wish to apply to and know what their specific requirements are. Then thirdly, once you have a job offer, you need to submit your application for recommendation to that community, and if the community recommends you, you can then apply for the permanent residence. Note that each community will have its own additional eligibility requirements, job search process, community recommendation application process. This information will be available on the websites of the different communities. And here's what you can expect Here's what you can expect from a community. And this pilot is community driven, meaning the communities will be the ones to assess prospective candidates, and these candidates are the ones who best fit the economic needs of that particular community. Secondly, you need a genuine employment opportunity that meets the community requirements. And thirdly, you need to show that you have the intention of staying in that community. You need to live and work in that particular community. If you meet these requirements, then the community will then recommend those applicants who meet the requirements to the IRCC, and it is the IRCC that has the final decision on whether or not to issue an applicant a permanent residence. The community also has the responsibility to connect newcomers with settlement services and mentoring opportunities with established members of the community. Now, let's narrow things down a bit. Now, let's focus a little bit on one or two of the communities. Let's look at Sault Ste. Marie, for instance. Here's the official website. You click on this link and it takes you directly to the website of Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario. Now, first, you need to make sure you meet the IRCC, the Federal Eligibility Requirements. Let's click on it and see what it is. Now, the Federal Eligibility Requirements include having qualified work experience, meeting or exceeding the language requirements, meeting or exceeding the educational requirements, show proof that you have enough money to support your transition into the community, you intend to live in the community and meet community specific requirements. So these first 5 requirements here are the federal eligibility requirements, and then this last one, the community specific requirements. These are the requirements specific to that particular community. In this case, we're looking at Sault Ste. Marie. So after you meet these federal eligibility requirements, here's a link to the federal eligibility requirements page. However, if you don't want to use the link, you can just come here and see what it says. For language requirements, I'm assuming you did the IELTS, or you would be doing the IELTS, so we'll be working with the Canadian Language Benchmark, which is also known as CLB. Now, if your job, your occupation falls under NOC 0 and A, you need at least CLB 6. If your occupation is under NOC B, you need a minimum of CLB 5. And if your skill type is under NOC C and D, you need a minimum of CLB 4. If your skill type is under NOC 0 and A, you need a minimum of CLB 6. If your skill type is under NOC B, you need CLB of 5 and above. And if your occupation falls under NOC C and D, you need a minimum of CLB 4. Now, you must submit your results from the designated language test. These results must be less than 2 years old when you apply. Now, for education, you need a Canadian high school diploma or its equivalent, and to show that you have its equivalent, you need to do an ECA, that is an educational credential assessment. The World Education Service, WES, is a good body to do this with. Now, this ECA report must be less than 5 years old, and if the ECA report was issued by a designated organization, the original report must have been issued on or after the date the organization was designated. Now, about settlement funds, for the Rnpp, for one person, you need 8,722 Canadian dollars. For 2 persons, you need 10,858. For 3 people, you need 13,348. Now, for 7 or more people, you need 23,000 plus. Now, to participate in this pilot program, you need to show that you're willing to live and work in the same community that you have applied to. For work experience, you need 1 year of continuous work experience, which means at least 1,560 hours work experience, same as 30 hours a week. So if you have a job where you had to work for at least 30 hours a week and you did it for 12 consecutive months, it qualifies as 1 year of work experience, and this work experience must have been within the last 3 years. Now, to calculate your hours of work experience, you need to count the hours worked in part-time and full-time jobs. These hours must be in one occupation, but they can be with different employers. The hours must be over a period of at least 12 months, and these working hours can be inside or outside of Canada. And these working hours must have been within or outside Canada. If you did any work that you were not paid for, please don't count it under your work experience. Volunteer and unpaid internships don't count. Don't count hours when you were self-employed. So in this case, you must be an employee. Now, your work experience must include most of the main duties and all the essential duties listed in your NOC. and the activities listed in the lead statement of your NOC. Now, your work experience must include most of the main duties and all of the essential duties listed in your NOC. The activities listed in the lead statement of your NOC as well. Now, your work experience must include most of the main duties and all the essential duties listed in your NOC, and the activities listed in the lead statement of your NOC as well. Now, the above listed criteria are federal requirements. This means that whatever community you apply to under the Rnpp, you must meet these criteria. Similar to what I stated earlier, if you're going to be applying to any of the communities, you must meet these requirements as explained here. Now, let's move to the requirements as requested by the particular community. In this case, we're looking at Sault Ste. Marie. Now, to apply to Sault Ste. Marie under the Rnpp, you need to first find full-time employment in Sault Ste. Marie. Now, you can use one of the many online platforms that help immigrants find work from outside of Canada. Now, be careful not to fall prey to scammers online, because there are a lot of fake companies claiming to offer or to help people find jobs, but in reality they just want to take your money. Now, if you're not currently employed or have a job offer, please apply to job postings that meet your past work experience and education. You can use any of these links to find jobs. Now, when applying, please make sure your resume is in the Canadian format so your application doesn't get tossed. You can Google this or have professionals edit your resume on your behalf. Like I said earlier, you can go on Fiverr. I know there are a lot of them there. Now, if you are trying to apply to this community and you do not find your skill type or your job requirements as part of the in-demand jobs, it means this community doesn't need your expertise right now. You should look for another community in need of your skill set, or you check back to this community at a later date. Now, please note, the city of Sault Ste. Marie will not assist candidates with their job search. Employers will conduct normal hiring practices such as interviews and reference checks. You must have the Rnip offer of employment form filled out and signed by your employer. It is your responsibility to upload this form as part of your application. If you want to get the Rnip offer of employment form, click on this link. Requirement number 2, you need to check if you match with the community, to see if you match with the community requirements. This is very important. It's a points-based system and you need to score a minimum of 70 points here. Now, the applicants need to receive a job offer, and if your job offer falls under any of this NOC, you get 5 points. Meaning, if you get a job offer and your job offer has to be under one of these NOCs here, then you get 55 points. Which means if you get a job, you just need to get 15 more points to meet the 70 points required here. So it is crucial that you get a job offer when applying to Sault Ste. Marie. Note, applicants with job offers not listed above will be considered only at the discretion of the Community Recommendation Committee. It's advised to stick to these classifications, but if your job offer is not under these classifications, you might still get lucky, but that's completely at the discretion of the Community Recommendation Committee. Now, second points-based requirement is your age. Remember, if you get a job offer, you get 55 points from this first criteria here. Second, if you're between 18 and 36, you get 6 points. If you're between 37 and 47, you get 3 points. If you're 48 and above, you get 0 points for age. So if you already got a job offer, that's 55 points. Now let's assume you're, say, between ages 18 to 36, that's 6 points. Add to the 55 points you got from above here if you got a job offer, that's 61 points in total. So now you just need to score you need to bag another 9 points. Now, under the third criteria, you need to get points for your work experience. Now, if you have 2 years work experience, you get 2 points. If you have 3 years work experience, you get 4 points. If you have 4 years work experience, you get 6 points. If you have 5 years, you get 8 points. And if you have 6 years plus work experience, you get 10 points. So let's assume you have, say, 3 years work experience, you get another 4 points. That means you already have 65 points as it is. You have 5 more points to make 70 points needed. Now here's the bonus. Applicants who have at least 1 year continuous full-time work experience in Sault Ste. Marie. I'm assuming you've never worked in Sault Ste. Marie, so you may not be able to bag this 8 points. But if you have worked for at least 1 year in Sault Ste. Marie, you get an additional 8 points. Now, if as an applicant you've studied in any post-secondary institution in Sault Ste. Marie, you get additional points. Could be 3 points if you studied for 1 year within the last 5 years, and it could be 6 points if you studied for 2 years plus within the last 5 years. Now, the applicant, if you're already a resident of Sault Ste. Marie, you get additional points. For instance, if you own a property within the boundaries of Sault Ste. Marie or live there, or if you've leased properties within the boundaries of Sault Ste. Marie, you get 4 points. If you own a property, you get 8 points. Now, important notice, applicants may be asked to provide mortgage documents or mortgage statements or letter from a bank to demonstrate ownership of property. Now, if the applicant has personal ties to established members of that community, you get extra points. For instance, if the applicant has an immediate family member, parent, sibling, or child who is a permanent resident or citizen of Canada and lives within the boundary of Sault Ste. Marie, you get an additional 10 points. Now, applicants that have extended family members, that is your grandparents, your uncles, your aunts, cousin, niece, nephew, and you get an additional 5 points if they live within the boundaries of Sault Ste. Marie. You may be asked to show proof of relationship with such family members. If you've ever visited Sault Ste. Marie and you spent at least 5 nights within the last 3 years, or you met with at least 2 employers in their line of work during that visit, you get an additional 8 points. If you have authentic knowledge of and interest in recreational, cultural, and lifestyle activities found in Sault Ste. Marie, you get an additional 5 points. So here's a cheap 5 points. You can just go online, read up on Sault Ste. Marie, do an extensive research, show that you understand and you know a lot about the community, its recreational, cultural, and lifestyle activities. Then you get an additional 5 points. If your spouse or common law partner has a valid job offer, you get an additional 10 points. Or if your applicant or spouse has at least 2 years of work experience within the NOC groups that were considered priority, you get an additional 5 points. If your spouse or common law partner has English or French language skill that exceeds CLB 5, you get an additional 5 points. Note that language test must be less than 2 years old when you apply. If you think you meet or you have up to 70 points from all criteria listed above, from all requirements listed above, then you should be ready to apply. If you're ready to apply, you click on this link, download the Rnip form, and then you submit the form here. After submission, a Sault Ste. Marie coordinator will request further documentation from you via email. Now, that documentation would include your resume, your language credentials, your education credentials, and any other supporting documents. For those asking how they can get a job on Sault Ste. Marie, you can check my previous videos on how to bag a job in Canada from Nigeria. I think that should help. Now, note that when submitting these documents to the Rnip coordinator, they must be copies and not the original version. The original ones would need to be sent to the RCC, so all you need to send to the Rnip coordinator is photocopies of the documents needed. Now, your application will be reviewed by the Community Recommendation Committee, and if it is determined that it meets the requirements of the Rnip, you'll be given a nomination letter from the Community Recommendation Committee via email. Now, it is this nomination letter that you can use to apply directly to the IRCC for your permanent residency. Now, Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada will do further review, including your medicals, your financial documents, and your criminal records check. Now, once you receive your PR, you can make arrangements for you and your family to move to Sault Ste. Marie. Eligible applications will be retained for a year. Applications will be reviewed by the Community Recommendation Committee on a monthly basis. Job application timelines will vary depending on employer and job you're applying for. Other points you have to consider. Due to high volume of applications and expressions of interest, not all inquiries will be answered. If you do not hear from them within 6 weeks, then it is likely you're not being considered. And if you wish to contact them, it is best to contact them via email in advance before coming to the Civic Center if you are in Canada. The Corporation of the City of Sault Ste. Marie is not affiliated with any immigration representative. Neither do they have preferential treatment for applicants who have hired an immigration representative. However, if you choose to have your paperwork completed by an immigration representative, please refer here for information on making an informed choice. You can use this link here. And applications that are not complete will not be considered. Of course, you should know that by now. And a job offer from Sault Ste. Marie, your English test, your ECA, and the financial requirements must all be met before an application will be considered. I think that's all you need to know about the Sault Ste. Marie Rural Northern Immigration Program. To find out about the Rnpp programs for other communities, check some of my other videos. If you have questions, please leave your comments in the section below and I'll answer as much as I can as soon as I can. Thank you.